Coming to you live back in my apartment. It's Rob Has a Podcast, and now here's the guy who would never ever slap or pinch Nana's butt. I'm Rob Cesternino. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rob Has a Podcast for Sunday night, July 10th, for Big Brother 18. I believe it's episode number 9 here, as we've got a lot to talk through here on our Sunday night of week 3. And with me to talk it through, a man who I last saw sometime around between 12:30 and 1 a.m. last night in a bar in Chicago. Here he is now to cover the Big Brother 18 episode in the live feeds. The great Alex Kidwell filling in for Taryn Armstrong.
Woo! Get ready for a takeover.
Yes. Okay.
Sometimes they call me the voice of the voiceless, Rob, but it really applies right now.
Yes, Alex is filling in off the bench for Taryn tonight, who is still traveling back from the big RHAP that we did out in Chicago. So Taryn will be joining us on Wednesday this week. Alex is filling in for Taryn. Brent is also away this week. So Alex is at what percent are you at tonight?
17?
17%, but he's also the last man off the bench to cover the Big Brother live feeds with us, and I appreciate his. He's a grinder.
Yep. You can't accuse me of throwing this competition, Rob.
Yes. Okay. So
no one could say I'm coasting here.
Okay, and I'm just going to go on adrenaline through this after a very fun but also a very long weekend in Chicago. We did our big RHAP. We were on a panel talking Big Brother. I had Andy Herron and Audrey with us to talk through Big Brother. That podcast is up on robswebsite.com. So we had a lot of fun discussion already this weekend about BB18. We have a Survivor panel to come as well, plus an RHAP host panel that we did. Those will all be up on the website, or if you subscribe to the podcast, go to robswebsite.com/iTunes. Okay, we're going to be taking your questions, hashtag RHAP, and also on our YouTube channel at robhasawebsite.com/YouTube. So a lot of stuff to get to tonight as we go through a very interesting episode, I thought, Alex. You know, we had the backdrop of everything going on with Bridget or Frank's HOH and his choices for the nominations. And so a little bit of intrigue there, but I felt like that the middle third of the episode focused primarily on some of the things that came up on Thursday night on the show that Jordan did, and big thanks to Jordan Parhar for filling in for me on Wednesday and Thursday night on the show that he did with Ian and Brent, talking about Frank, and we really got to see a lot of interesting perspective from Devon and Frank from the diary room as well, in a very interesting that I'm not sure if everybody is calling it. I know Hamster Watch was calling it hashtag #AssSlapGate.
Yeah, I mean, that's the BB norm, is just throw a gate on the end of whatever we're talking about at the moment.
Yes,
feeds.
Well, I love it. I love the. That's my favorite way to describe things. But anyway, so we had talked this through over the weekend about what's going on here. I had not seen the video from the feeds, but I had read a lot of the reports coming out of the house, and it was a question for me over whether, we know that Devon is trying to take Frank out. Is any of this being played up for a strategic purpose to really sort of besmirch Frank's character in the house? I think it is 130% evident from tonight's episode that is not the case. And I actually felt like that Devon, who you heard her say tonight, I don't want to be Devon from last summer and fly off the handle. I thought that she exercised a lot of discretion going through all this tonight.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's really the key reason why so many people have just been so anti-Frank with all this stuff going on. It's like, what can you ask Devon to do? You know what I mean? Short of like telling Frank to just go F himself and like making a spectacle of the situation. Like, she is trying to handle a very difficult, very uncomfortable situation in a house where you just can't tell people what you really think. It's unbelievably difficult, and I think she's handling it remarkably well considering the circumstances.
Because from what I understood from, Frank had been saying things, but really the way that it was presented on the show, and I do want to get your take on whether you feel like that it was told in a way that resembled the truth that you've seen on the live feeds, but it was told in a way where it seemed like it wasn't just that, it was a bunch of things had already been piling up, and that just happened to be the last straw. Did you feel like that the show did a good job of being faithful to the events as they happened in the house over the last couple of days?
I thought tonight they did a pretty good job of painting an accurate picture of why sentiment in the House is turning against Frank. I think we also saw a situation where, I think Davon was talking to other women and made it clear that like this isn't just happening with Davon. Like it was Zakiya for a while, like, and he does it with all the women in the house, like whether it's like the pinching Natalie, like so we saw a little bit of Frank's interactions with other people. The thing that to me was the biggest misrepresentation of the edit was actually the fact that like Frank only went and apologized to Davon after Paulie came and sat him down and told him like, dude, that's not cool. So if anything, the edit was like a little kind to Frank, which is, I mean, it speaks terribly to the way he's been playing this game so far lately. I mean, he really has let this HOH he didn't win go to his head.
Yeah, that I really thought that the line, which I thought really resonated, was where Davon went into the diary room and sat down and said, "Look, can I just stay in here for a minute? Let me just collect my thoughts." And as she's crying, she's just telling us, she's like, I have a daughter, and not in a Devin bro way. She's telling us like I'm trying to raise a daughter. What am I supposed to show her? That this guy is calling me a slut on TV and telling me, shut your damn mouth, woman, and slapping her on the ass. And, and from Frank's perspective, as we saw, like he is joking. He's not trying to be disrespectful. But when you're getting the headlines of all that stuff, you certainly can understand how Davon is reacting to all this. And I wouldn't be surprised, Alex Kidwell, if we wake up tomorrow morning with Davon being squarely at #1 in the Joker's update popularity.
Yeah, rightly so. I mean, what she's having to put up with right now is stuff that that's not what Big Brother is about. You know what I mean? Like yes, you have to deal. Like yes, they put in people from all different walks of life, and obviously this idea that like Frank is from like a very different background where Nana is pinching asses and stuff like that's all fine and good, but like you have to respect the boundaries of other people. And like I just think Frank, like he just plays too much. He doesn't think about other people's perspectives before he does and says the things he does. And yeah, having the power, all the power this week, I think has only like exacerbated the problem. Like he came into the house thinking he was hot stuff, and now he just like knows it again. You know what I mean? So it's not good for his ego.
Yeah, it's funny because 7 days ago, we were a lot of people feeling like, boy, Frank, what a great job Frank is doing so far in Big Brother 18. And it was last week on the Happy Hour on Monday when you guys first said, Frank isn't doing as good of a job as a lot of people think. This might be a bit of a hot take. And really, from that moment, things have really caught up in the real time now where just about universally everybody's out on Frank.
Yeah, it's almost like he listened to it, right? And he just like followed our advice of what not to do.
Yeah. I mean, it really does speak to why Frank is struggling in this game. Hypothetically speaking, let's say that every interaction at Frank Udy's house is everybody's, pinching, slapping each other's ass. Nana, oh, hey, Nana, how are you, Nana? Hey, Nana. Hey, Psycho Sid, how are you doing? Everybody's just pinching and slapping everybody's butt all along the way. But but first, when you come into the Big Brother house, you just have to know that, like, read the room here, Frank, that this is not being received well at all.
Absolutely not. No, and I mean, it's just, it really is. It speaks to just a total lack of self-awareness in that house. And yeah, like I said, even the edit tried to show that he like had a modicum of awareness there when he went to apologize to Davon, but like I said, that was probably the only thing that was misrepresented.
Yeah. So for Frank, though, he really feels like, and we'll talk about when we get to the live feeds, everything that's going on with the overall tone of the weekend. But boy, I've got Bridget, I've got the two nominees that I picked out. I won the roadkill, and we're off to the races here. I've got the bases loaded, and now it's time to drive home the runs for this week.
Yeah, short-term plan doesn't have a lot of good long-term implications for him, I don't think. Um, yeah, it's tough. You know, he's definitely in hot water for next week, and he has no real clue of how universally public opinion has turned against him in the House. So, yeah, he's got to watch it, but you know, he doesn't know that. So, you know, is he going to? I kind of doubt it. You know.
Yeah. It really, everything going on with Devon and Frank overshadowed the rest, I felt like, of the nominations for the week. We have Bridget, who ultimately is going to put up Tiffany and Paul up on the block, and then we have the Roadkill, which Frank wins, which Bronte gets nominated. I guess let's talk through the Bronte part of it first, because we're talking about Frank and some of the mistakes that he's been making. It seems to me, even on top of all of these social mistakes that Frank is making, go back to week one. Frank won the first BB Roadkill, and he put his very close ally and co-HOH, Bridget, up on the block back at that point. He does not tell her. She does not know that Frank had put her up on the block. He befriends Bridget. He keeps her very close. He's basically running her HOH for her. And then he wins the roadkill on her week as HOH, and then nominates one of her co-spy girls, does not tell her, but proceeds to tell a bunch of other people in the house. We are left with her at the end of the episode. If I find out who put my friend Bronte up on the block, there's going to be hell to pay. This is really setting up the stage for, at some point, this whole house of cards to really just collapse on Frank.
Yeah, there's a couple of smoking guns out there waiting to be found, and it's really only a matter of time until somebody, and, you know, I mean, James and Natalie are getting closer. Like, that could easily be, you know what I mean? You're starting to see more and more people potentially confide in the former Jose contingent that now doesn't really have a, they're like, you know, the group without a leader. So they're just kind of, you know, they're fair game at this point. And if you can bring them in with information, then that makes them loyal to you. So, yeah, I think we could see something like that get revealed in not too long. And I think, you know, everyone's saying Frank was doing such a great job after the first week. I think it maybe speaks to, if you're playing a great game after the first week, are you even really playing a great game? Because it's so soon for everyone in the house to be like, boy, Frank's really got this, you know, he's making friends with everybody. It's like, you don't want people to recognize that until like past jury. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. And so with Frank telling everybody about this, now how many people did he tell? The entire 8-pack?
More or less. I mean, obviously he's not telling Tiffany. There may have been like one or two people he didn't tell, but no, Michelle was in the room. Michelle is like, I think he pretty much told the entire group, and the ones he didn't tell heard from other members of the group too. So yeah.
Just Chekhov's roadkill all over the place for Frank.
Yeah, it's not a great situation.
Chekhov's Winnebago is in full effect.
He needs to hop back in that Model T and drive himself back a few weeks to where he can like undo all these mistakes.
And again, we talked about this in the beginning of the season. Well, boy, this roadkill really plays into Frank's hands, where he can win this competition and nobody knows. And then he won it the first week. He won it the third week. You heard Nicole tonight tell you in the diary room, like, Frank wins everything. And he's like bragging about how he won it. And it's really exactly the opposite of where he wants to be, where everybody feels like that he's just going to be dominating these competitions.
Yep, Big Brother 14 Frank all over again. This is the guy that came into the house and started doing standing push-ups up against the wall in week 1. And everyone was like, boy, that guy's a physical threat, huh? So, yeah, I mean, just, you know, it speaks to a total lack of self-awareness, a total lack of how others perceive him. And, yeah, I mean, he thinks he can do no wrong right now, I think, to a degree.
So then let's go back to Bridget and her nominations of what she wants to do. We got to see Frank getting to be pretty manipulative with Bridget on what she wants to put up, or what she wanted to do in terms of her HOH week. Now, Alex, from what you've seen on the live feeds, do you feel like was Bridget painted in a correct light tonight? Because she came off to me especially clueless on the episode.
I think it was pretty fair, and I think even more so than like, was it accurate to what happened? It's 100% accurate to the house view of what happened, and that is almost more important. The perception almost trumps reality in the Big Brother house. So the fact that everyone views this as Frank's HOH and Bridget being his puppet pretty much makes it the case. And to be honest, it was mostly that case. Like, Bridget was having casual talk. She won the HOH and like pulled a Steve, like, oh, I don't think I wanted to win that. You know what I mean? And then like really backed up, like, I don't want to nominate anyone. And it's just like, come on, you know what I mean? So then Frank goes in and talks to her, and it really was like, it's not like he had a railroad or anything. He pretty much just like told her names, and she was like, oh, okay. Like, I just, like that line where she was like, I don't know what's stupid and what's legit. Like, that was the takeaway I got from that initial conversation, where she's just, tell me what to do, please. Somebody like do this for me,
Yeah, she's like, how about Nicole and Corey as nominees? Frank's like, well, I don't know if that's really a good idea. Maybe let's workshop this a little bit. And so we ultimately end up with Tiffany, who Frank wants up on the block there with Paul. And Bridget, we saw her then talking with Bronte about what's going on with these nominees. And you saw Bronte trying to really like say to Bridget, like, but everybody thinks that this is Frank's HOH, and Bridget seemed clueless to the fact that this was a good thing, where we can't even give her the benefit of the doubt, where it's like, okay, well, this is actually perfect for Bridget, because then she could be feeling like, okay, she won't get any blood on her hands, everybody would be mad at Frank. And when Bronte told her that that was going to be the case, she's like, hey, that's not what I want. I don't want people to think that I'm just doing what Frank wants. I need people to think that this was my idea.
Well, Rob, I guess the beauty of being an endgame GOAT kind of player is that you don't yourself know that that's who you are. I mean, I refer to Victoria calling herself Batman to Derek's Robin. So, I think that speaks a bit to this kind of mindset.
I really hated I really hated Bridget's nomination. They should have just let Frank do the nomination speech, because it really was, in my mind, it was so weak what she was doing. And again, if it was like that she was strong and she was presenting weak, then I would say, okay, well, this is a good idea. But it was really like, I felt, to use the metaphor, I think that she was like a third grader, like giving a presentation in front of the class, where she was just like nervous and fidgeting, and like just tells us who the nominees are, and then says, okay, and then if you want to talk more about it, we can talk about it over Cheetos upstairs. Is this right? I don't know.
Yeah, it's so pathetic. It really reminded me of, I'm so dead right now, Rob, but I'm having trouble remembering who it was. I think it was Shane in Big Brother 14, where he just had like the worst speech ever. Like, ultimately you have clues, information, and like it was just like it was a complete nothing of a speech. And like this instantly reminded me of that, where it's like, you've done your, like, you could have said nothing and come off with a better image than you did with this like dribble that just emerged from your face.
Yeah. And maybe this is a point where we could say, okay, well, look how far Bridget has come by the end of the game. But it is not feeling too exciting if you have a lot of stock in Bridget in terms of a player in the Big Brother 18.
Yeah, Walt N in the chat room calls it a bridge to nowhere, and I think that's pretty spot on.
Okay. I also want to talk about with, let's see, a couple other things from the episode. We have the Nicole and Corey potential showmance. Alex, in terms of the live feeds, we haven't talked about that being a real thing, but certainly a flirtation. Did the show overstate how much that is a potential flirtmance?
I think if you want to say that like anything was off about that portrayal, I think it painted it as very one-sided. Like Nicole was like worshiping Corey's body a little bit, where my perspective is more like Corey follows Nicole around more than Nicole follows Corey around. Nicole is the veteran. Corey is the guy that is clueless in this game. Corey needs Nicole more than Nicole needs Corey, and I didn't get that impression from the episode.
Mhm.
Other than that, though, yeah, I mean, they do spend a lot of time together. You can tell Nicole really does like just find him very attractive. But I did think it was funny that these are both the people that, to some varying degree, get like the dodo edit so far this season. Like Corey with the hashtag I mean, and like all these things that he's been getting that just kind of make him look dumb. And then you had Nicole this episode with that moment where she like choked on her water. Like, what was
Yeah.
that? You know what I mean? They just threw that in there just to kind of make her look bad, I guess. I don't know. It's funny, but
I don't know. Yeah, that was just so random that there was no payoff other than I guess we didn't get a James prank tonight, so we needed like a 30-second thing to fill in the time. Why don't we have Nicole just choking on a glass of water?
yeah. Well, we got Frank pranks. We got Frank doing the fireman's carry, a classic wrestling move on Nicole in the pool, and then that's what kind of started off the Frank plays too much, and I get that. If I was I'm a guy and I don't weigh anything close to Frank, and I don't want to be fireman carried and like DDT'd into a pool by this guy. No, thank you.
Let alone Frank talking about waxing your mustache and cutting down on eating so it doesn't go to your abs.
Yeah, yeah, not okay. I mean, just terrible strategically, terrible, just terrible.
So one of the things that really got lost in the shuffle is the actual target for the week, which, according to Frank, is that he wants Tiffany to go home. But we really didn't see too much of, Tiffany's reaction and a lot of the will of the house, where I think we got in the episode, okay, Frank wants to take out Tiffany, but we didn't really get too much from what does the rest of the house want to do. And based on what we saw in the episode, we didn't even address that at all in terms of the will of the house.
It's true. And then also, for someone who is, theoretically the one in trouble right now, Tiffany got very little airtime. I mean, it really was more about the house versus Frank, even though this is more likely a week that's, it's certainly Frank's safe. It's not going to be Frank's downfall now. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I can't remember really a week where the person who was like, Victor was more of a star of the show last week than Tiffany has been so far on this week. But yeah, I don't know. I guess they just wanted to, kind of do the Frank stuff now before it kind of starts to spiral online or whatever.
It really is pretty wild in terms of what's going on, where you have this plot to take out Frank happening in the background, but Frank has the power this week. And it really spoke to some of the reasons why Davon couldn't really have done anything about the way that things unfolded tonight. And just we covered this, but again, just really kudos to Davon. Compare how she handled this with how she handled that confrontation with Clay in Big Brother 17.
Absolutely. And, I think it's not an identical situation at all, but it does remind me of the Caleb Amber dynamic in Big Brother 16, because Caleb was in the dominant group and Amber kind of like needs Caleb to like her, you know what I mean? And it's just, it's not comfortable because it's not, you know what I mean? Like it's predicated on just, we can't have a straight up conversation because this game is all about deception, and it just creates very weird and uncomfortable situations sometimes. It's kind of the nature of the game, I guess, but it's a shame to see.
Yeah, and so we will probably get more of that on Wednesday as we get into what the will of the house is at this point in time, and certainly something that we're going to explore as we get to the live feeds. Also, with Tiffany on the block this week, we are trying to track down a Vanessa Rousseau interview coming up later on this week. We might even break into special emergency coverage if it doesn't coincide with a night that we're doing the show.
Yeah, yeah.
Just put that out there.
And it needs to happen, Rob. It'd be well worth it.
Good. When that breaking news happens, you want to talk about James and Natalie?
Sure. I mean, do you?
Sure. I mean, tonight I really feel like, and we've been talking about it on the feeds and what's been going on, where we've been watching on the feed version of Big Brother for a while now, this potential flirtmance between James and Natalie. I think this was the first time that we got to see it really unfold on the show. We got a lot of diary rooms from Natalie. Any sort of thought that, oh, maybe Natalie is playing James. She does seem to be genuinely interested.
She is genuinely interested. Yeah, I don't think Natalie is someone who's really very manipulative like that. I think she's a very honest, kind, sweet girl, and I think that actually is why she'll probably go very far in this game. Nobody really sees her as a threat because it's not really there to be seen. Yeah, no, I think it's just, it's great for James. He's wanted to find a showmance now for 2 summers, and it seems to be coming together for him. So good for him. I did think like it's very cute. When he's like, using the phone. Like, I like that someone's actually using the phone, even if it's just for like, girl talk type stuff. But I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of prefer this from like my One Tree Hill a little more than my Big Brother. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, and Natalie says that James is the kind of guy she could see herself dating.
Yeah, yeah, and she said it in the DR. Man, so you got to take it at face value. She's got no reason to make it up.
Yeah. Do we have a name for the James and Natalie showmance?
I don't think there is one. Jadalee?
Jadalee? I feel like that's weak sauce. Jadalee.
Jadalee.
Names is not working. No. All right. We'd love to hear from in the chat room about some of their suggestions. So Paul's also on the block this week. Are you feeling like Paul, other than commenting on how handsome he is on the memory wall, he didn't really get a lot of airtime tonight either.
Yeah, and well, he really is. I think, he was put up with the intention certainly of being the pawn, and that was pretty evident from Frank's, Frank's insistence that Tiffany be the one to go. But yeah, I think Paul is, he's adapting to this game well for someone that has no clue what it is, and I'd never really watched it. He's learning to navigate the block and the knowledge that you can kind of sit up there, and if you don't like stress people out, and he keeps going on with this power of friendship nonsense, that he may last anyway. So good for him. An addendum though, Johnny Mac does not hold that record. First place Victoria, nominated 10 times. Second place Spencer Clausen, nominated 9 times. So maybe you don't have to watch Big Brother to know how to play the game, but if you want to quote statistics, maybe you should do some background research.
Yeah, and he is constantly in danger, but is always wisecracking, doesn't seem too panicky. He's like Big Brother 18's answer to Deadpool.
That's a very interesting comparison. I definitely, more so lately. Deadpool. That's great. I've kind of seen the the early season Zach Rance comparisons that people have been talking about. This is a guy that came in with a lot of energy and charisma, and definitely seems to be motivated to try to learn and to try to improve and to try to get as far as he can, using the skills that he believes he has. So that's good. I mean, it's a fresh perspective, especially with like all these veritable Corys lurking around out there.
Yeah. All right. Now let's go ahead and jump into some questions, and then we'll get to the live feeds. Okay. James Crockett wants to say, sure, Frank's controlling Bridget, but isn't it in her best interest to help his game?
It's a mixed bag. I think if Bridget had known just how anti-Frank the House sentiment was the moment she won HOH, I think she probably would have been much less reluctant to listen to him. I think she really sees Frank as like her lifeline to the end game. You know what I mean? Oh, Frank is so good. He's always going to be here. So let me just kind of like hitch my wagon to him. And unfortunately, it's not the right, it's heading off a cliff very slowly, and she needs to like decouple fast.
Yeah, but not for anything from her perspective. What's the better alternative? Like stick with Frank, or really like, okay, I'm going to go all in on this Spy Girls thing.
Yeah, who have really been on point in terms of the like knowing the house dynamics and where the votive lies this season? The Spy Girls. That's who you need to turn to. Yeah, no, I get why she went to Frank. I totally get it.
Mm-hmm. Logan Elliott says, what are the chances of Paul staying this week? Well, let's explore that more when we discuss the live feeds as we head into the weekend and the veto, and we'll talk about who we are projecting right now to be going home this Thursday. Let's take another question, and let's bring in Janet McKay, who says, is Day trying to save Tiffany this week? Shouldn't they keep her over Paul as a vote to get Frank out next week? Again, that's probably too much into the live feed. So if the questions are going to be a lot about the vote, then I think we should probably call it here in terms of exploring the show and get into the live feed conversation. Anything else from tonight's episode?
No, I think a lot of people are happy to see that the show didn't decide to just, bury their head in the sand with this Frank stuff. A lot of people have been reacting very, very, adversely to it online. So good for Big Brother for owning it, for not shying away, for trying to do justice to people's feelings and the reason that they're feeling them. That's
Yeah,
what
I
this show
agree.
is.
I really actually was pleasantly surprised that they explored this as much as they did. I thought that they were going to. At first, I thought when they did the thing about that Frank likes to have fun in the house, and then we got to see like the little montage of jokes, I thought we were just going to sort of say, okay, let's just throw that out there to sort of explain why Davon seems so agitated with Frank. But I really was glad that they fully explored the events in the house, and I was glad to get to see it because just from reading it, I definitely came away with a much different understanding about what was going on in the house based on just what I had read over the week.
Definitely, yeah, and it's interesting because the way that montage started, I did think it was like, oh, we didn't have a James prank to go to, so we're gonna find a Frank prank. But then, yeah, once like the edit turned and kind of the music stopped, I was like, okay, good, we're doing this. All right, all right. And honestly, I think, it may be uncomfortable to talk about, but like that's why a lot of people love this game, right? I mean, all these people from different walks of life put in a pressure cooker, and situations like this emerge. And I think they're important conversations to talk about and good things to explore. And they're conversations that need to be had in society in general as well. So this is why we watch, I think, to some degree, Rob.
Okay. All right. So that's going to do it for our show portion of the show, but we got a lot more to explore and your questions as we get to the live feeds. But total amateur hour on my part. I don't have my laptop set up here to do my sound effects, so you're just going to have to take our word for it. It's spoiler time. Old school spoiler time. Okay?
Warning.
Warning. All right, we're getting into all of the spoilers, and so last chance to get out here, and let's do this. Alex, take us through the events of the weekend.
Okay, so in broadest terms, Frank won Roadkill. Frank nominates Bronte. Bridget wins Power of Veto, and Bridget, I think, at least for now, looks inclined to leave the noms as are.
Okay. All right, so now with the block set of Bronte, Paul, and Tiffany, the House is planning on voting out.
It looks really, really bad for Tiffany right now, Rob.
Yeah. Yes, this is a big struggle for Tiffany here. And that's why I was so surprised that we really did not see much of her perspective on this episode. I mean, if we're setting up for Thursday and that she's going to potentially be going home, I'm surprised that they're really not trying to get all the airtime they can out of her.
Yeah, and I think, it's interesting because people have talked about how she's so paranoid and how she's like, overreacting and stuff. I thought she handled the nomination really well. Like that whole night she was like having conversations, she was engaged. I got multiple moments where she's like grinning and like she definitely, I think it's a lot more of people just like thinking about Vanessa than it really was people observing Tiffany's behavior, because I really didn't see much bad from her this time. And she, maybe it helps that she had been on the block once and survived, and you kind of like, shake off the jitters a little bit, but I thought she actually handled it pretty well. I mean, there are, she's in a tough spot now, but there's moves to be made, I think. Like we've talked about, there are a couple smoking guns out there that people aren't aware of, whether it's Bridget not knowing about some things Frank has done, Frank not knowing about a lot of the House's sentiment against him. Like there's some things that could be shared with some people that might shake the game up, and I think that's what Tiffany needs to be thinking about right now.
So does Tiffany have a master plan that you have been able to detect at this point? Is she waiting for later in the week to make a move, or is she just trying to really slow play it in terms of working the social game?
Unfortunately, and shout out to Audrey, who mentioned this a couple times on the panel this weekend, but Tiffany seems to have gone into blanketing mode, which is
no.
It doesn't have the best track record for success, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. But I do feel like that. It's really tricky. I was thinking about this recently. If I was in the Big Brother house and I was on the block, how I would approach the week that I was nominated. I think that the first couple days you do have to sort of like have a lot of chill and not go crazy. But then you really just need to then start to work it the last couple days that you're going to be there.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting discussion right now because there's a few different approaches, and I don't think you can take them all. Because like if you go to Bridget and bury Frank, you can't then go to Frank and like sell out the Fatal Five. You know what I mean? So it's interesting. This weekend, me and Antonio were debating this a little bit. Antonio Mazzaro, who does some podcasts with us, and yeah, it's interesting. It's like what path is optimal for Tiffany here. I think ultimately like selling Frank down the river with him being safe, like what does it really gain you right now? To me, probably the best play is to, maybe he doesn't buy it, but go to Frank, blow up the Fatal Five, tell him that, look, man, if we don't turn this, just pull this together and turn it around right now, I mean, this is only good for everyone that's not you and me. They're going to get, they're having you do their dirty work to take me out. They're going to turn it on you next week. It's common knowledge. Like, there's cards to be played here, and it'll be interesting to see if, like, she's just waiting for later in the week to make a move.
But how would that work, where she would flip to the guys and then vote against Bronte?
Yeah, or like maybe they can, I doubt like they would want to take out Paul, but the veto ceremony is tomorrow, so they still could potentially do something with Bridget's veto if they, find a way, if she finds a crack there. I don't think she's totally dead in the water, and I don't want to see her give up because I think there are plays for her here.
Yeah, it really seems to me that her best bet to try to get out of all of this is to go to the women and really say, like, hey, I am with you guys. I want to take out Frank, and let's take out Paul because he could potentially be a number for the guys if Frank is trying to bro down with the Coreys and Paulies of the world. The problem is, I think, for Tiffany, is that Frank driving a wedge between himself and the women, it looks as though that the Paulies and Jameses of the world have smartly said, like, oh yeah, that Frank's over the line. We have to eventually get rid of Frank at some point too.
Yeah, and it's tough. Like, she's in a position where ideally, yes, she would work with those girls, but those girls kind of iced her out a bit. And like you hear Nicole and Davon, and they talk, and like we just can't deal with, like, we're not going to have Vanessa just destroy us all. Like, we're not going to let her. Like, they're basically calling her Vanessa and saying, like, we're not going to let her do what she did last season. Like, it's impossible, I think, at some level to like reverse that sentiment. And if that's not working over there, then hell, I know where some bodies are buried. Let me go dig them up and show them to Frank. I mean, I feel like that is an option. I mean, Frank has been shown in the past to be someone who, if he can be convinced the entire house is against him, Dan's funeral, he might just flip and save his biggest target. You know what I mean? There's precedence.
It's funny
here
that you mentioned Dan's funeral because Frank was on the live feeds this afternoon sort of railing against Dan Gieseling, where Michelle, right, was talking him up, and Frank was like, oh, the funeral wasn't even that good. That was totally blown out of proportion, and said that basically he doesn't like Dan because, get this, Dan isn't humble.
How about that, right? Yeah, no, and I think the fact that Frank didn't think he was manipulated by that situation tells me that it could work again. Like, that's, to me, the biggest takeaway is like, well, if he didn't learn his lesson the first time, then he needs to be exposed to the scenario again, and, it may well work out for Tiffany. So, yeah, Tiff's funeral, I want it. We need it. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I know somewhere that Taryn must be fuming right now that the name of Dan was taken in vain by Frank all afternoon today.
Yeah, and the things you were saying, I mean, it's just, if you watched any feeds in 14, it just seems so laughable. Like, I never for a second bought what he was selling. Like, he would just lie on the Bible every day. And, like, dude, it's like, maybe you've convinced yourself of this over the last 4 years, but I don't remember that.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people are probably listening to this, and I've seen it in the chat room as well, the Chekhov's Winnebago that we talked about earlier in the show. Do you think that this is going to be a realistic play for Tiffany to go to Bridget and say, like, hey, just so you know, because Tiffany probably doesn't know that Frank won the roadkill again this week, but she probably knows, she does know it from the first week. Do you think that this is a card she might play?
And that was Antonio's pitch. Is like, shouldn't she go to Bridget and blow that up? Because that does seem like
very smart man, Antonio.
The piece of information you could take to an individual and change their mind the quickest, right? I mean, we've seen Bridget say, when I find out, that'll change my mind. Imagine when she finds out it was Frank, you know what I mean? But to me, the only issue there is that Frank is totally safe. So if you're going to make that move, you have to also spin it in a way that convinces Bridget that, like, this, we can't take a shot at Frank, but you can take, like, vicariously a shot at Frank through Paul or something. Like, if she can sell it in a way that puts someone else who could possibly go home this week in the line of fire, then good. But if all she can do is bury Frank to Bridget, then ultimately what's that going to accomplish? Because Frank is walking, I mean, he's totally safe this week. There's no way to take him out. The team's twist is kind of seen to that. So.
Yeah, what would that look like? Hypothetically, if Bridget took Tiffany off the block, then, like, who would be the replacement nominee?
Yeah, I mean, well, at that point, like, things would have shifted so dramatically that, right, it would have, like, all kind of, who knows where that would have spiraled at that point. Yeah, I mean, right, Corey, Paulie, I think are still seen as Frank's people. The funny thing is they're talking about getting him out too at this point, so he doesn't have anyone really, and that's why I'm a little, like, thinking that, like, really, what's selling Frank out going to get you? Everyone's already against him. Whereas, like, if you sell out the girls, like, their word, their standing in the house is still good. You know what I mean? Frank's already buried. You can't bury him anymore. But these girls are sitting high, and you can, like, shed new light on the scheming that they've had going on, which they've been doing some scheming. We know this.
Alex, how's Paul reacting to being on the block again this week?
I think he's doing really well. I think he's, you know, someone that's just kind of figured out that, like, if I just kind of, like, you know, play up the, you know, fun-loving, you know, goofy guy and don't talk a lot of game, that's where I'm best at. You know, occasionally then he will still talk game, and I'm just like, Paul, just don't talk game. Like, you're actually at your best when you, like, only bring up, like, personal stuff and are just kind of, like, being a goofy guy. I mean, really, that's the image he needs to carry if he wants to keep going in this game. The moment he, like, wins a roadkill or, like, tries to do something here, he's going to be a target again.
Okay. Do you want to report any events from Nicole over the weekend?
I'm trying to think. Possibly. What are you referring to, Rob? Help me out here.
I did watch a YouTube video of a prank gone wrong. Not everybody is a master pranker like James.
Oh, right. Yeah, so you'll forgive me for not remembering this. I'm trying to, like, focus on, like, strategic, you know, development and, you know, like, big picture issues, like, you know, women's ethics, and you want to talk about failed pranks here, Rob.
Yes, okay. All right, fine. Now you've shamed me to not explore this subject with you. Okay. What about in terms of from Frank's perspective, in terms of boy, I've got this whole week laid out. Has Frank suspected that anything could be afoot?
No, and I think it speaks at this point more to his arrogance than the way people are covering it up, because a lot of conversations are happening in a lot of rooms where it's like Frank should have some degree of awareness here, and I think he's just got blinders on. He feels safe, he feels strong, he feels in power, and, you know, the POV that Bridget won was this. I think it was the return of the exploding paint bombs, Rob, which is, like, one of my favorite competitions. So hopefully we'll get to see that on Wednesday. But it seems like Bridget, like, really messed up her ankle winning the thing, like, really sprained it. And so it's been funny, like, she's literally, like, riding Frank's back up and down the stairs and stuff. Like Frank is literally and figuratively carrying her in this game right now.
Frank's literally carrying his team on his entire back. Very good. Good stuff. Okay, so then I want to get into some more questions from you guys as well. In terms of anything else of note going on, Alex?
You know, yeah, this kind of, like, all weekend, really, I think the biggest takeaway that I've had is just, like, Frank and Michelle just back and forth. Michelle just saying things that just rub Frank the wrong way, like, it's really innocuous, dumb things, like, you know, just she makes a comment about liking Dan, and that's enough to, like, set him off. He's very, very touchy when it comes to Michelle now, and he's, like, also thinking he's her coach because they're on the same team, and he's like, yeah, I gave Michelle, like, an ultimatum, like, she has to learn 3 things about Bridget today. You know what I mean? It's like, dude, that's not your role in this game. Like, that's not your job, and it's not helping you. You know what I mean? So, like, that's bad. And then also, like, as unfortunate as it is, I hadn't really heard it until today. I don't know if it had really been thrown out there, but, like, Frank was talking today about getting Davon out. It's like, you know, is this a fallout of, like, she actually, like, told you what was up and confronted you, and now, like, it took you a couple days, but, you know, and Frank talks about getting everyone out too openly, so it's like you don't even really know where his head's at, and that's why his alliance is really turned on him. But as far as Devon goes, like to me, it's really a shame that like, oh, we're so good, and then Devon like tells me my joking isn't okay, and now 2 days later, like I think she's my target. It's just like, come on, man.
Yeah. And the Davon thing, in terms of what she wanted to do this week, this is what I sort of had a hard time wrapping my head around. Of why did the Fatal Four want to get rid of Tiffany here if their goal is to get rid of Frank, and Tiffany's the person to get rid of Frank? And I'm not sure if it was either Hamster Watch or Big Brother Network that had tweeted this, but basically it was saying that the idea of voting out Tiffany this week, even though she's with the women, supposedly, is to not arouse Frank's suspicion for the point when they take the shot at Frank.
Right, yeah. I mean, the guy's totally safe, so it's almost like everything that was set up at the end of week 2, just a 1 week hold. You know what I mean? Let's just like ice in these feelings, and let's not forget how we feel, but just, we can't do anything about that right now. And I think it's people have done it pretty well. Like you see this all the time in Big Brother, where people make plans down the road and then it doesn't work out, and people can't reconcile what they wanted to have happen and what they saw in their head with the reality of the situation. But I think, the majority of the 8-pack has done a really good job of, and maybe part of it is that none of them want to do Frank any favors at this point, but they've done a good job of kind of keeping that in-house. There's been a couple conversations, though, again, like I said, where it's like Frank's walking by, and I feel like that might, like, my ears might perk up a time or two, but he's just not hearing it, I guess.
All right, let's take a few more questions tonight. This is from Maya, who says, since no one knows Michelle exists, wouldn't it be a good idea for her to rat everyone out to Frank and make an ally?
No, see, I think Michelle, like, yes, she's not getting any airtime whatsoever, but she's super safe. She's in a great position, and Nicole really trusts her. Like, she's distanced herself well. She was really close with Tiffany early in the game. She recognized the sentiment turning against Tiffany even before it did against Frank, and like slowly kind of distanced herself, and now she's really tight with Nicole. I think Michelle is actually a lot better at this game than a lot of people want to give her credit for. She's not necessarily great. Like, her social game isn't fantastic. Like, sometimes she puts her foot in her mouth, but she understands the strategy and the positioning and how you set yourself up for weeks down the road, I think. And that's really important, and it's something very few people in this house, maybe one person in this house, truly understands.
Okay. Brent Showerman says, how scared should the house be about Bridget's watch your freaking back DR at the end? Seems like she means business. Should people be afraid of business Bridget?
Yeah, terrified. Because, yeah, like the only discussion that's been had about using the veto really between Bridget and Frank is like, yeah, like we could take down Bronte and put up Natalie. Like Bridget's like only, like she's picking between pawns or like our only allies at this point. It's just an incredibly weak HOH all the way around.
Mm-hmm. All right. Connie Blackwell says, Connie Blackwell, I apologize. Production must be listening to RJP since they gave us Frank's time. So did you catch that in the roadkill?
Yeah, I totally did. Winner, 56 seconds. Yeah, I was surprised to see that. I mean, I guess if we get the winner's time and no one else's, like it's still just as good as getting no times, because like just write a number down. You know what I mean? Who knows if it's accurate? But yeah, I'm glad that we saw it. I wish like as people opened their boxes, it showed their times. Like we would see more. But beggars can't be choosers. I'm glad we got this. This is good.
Okay. William Rinaldi wants to know, with everything going on with Frank, why are they still going with his wants? Well, we talked a little bit about not wanting to tip him off, but is that how everybody is looking at this? The Coreys and Paulies and Jameses as well?
Yes, and I think the biggest reason is that they're like, you can't deny, even if you didn't watch Frank's season, you can't deny now that he's a competition beast. 2 out of the 3 road kills. So yeah, it's really. People know that if Frank is somehow alerted to this, he's going to try like hell for head of household, and nobody wants that. Like, nobody wants him on edge playing these competitions all out, because right now he feels safe, and he feels like, we can, like a group can plan how we're going to throw this thing and stuff, and they want that scenario only, to throw it in a way that will allow them to take out Frank.
So, Alex, where is the base of power really in the house right now? Is it in that couples alliance plus Davon, and then with James on the side? Is it really that 6 is the group that's calling the shots in the house?
Yeah, it's to me, it's almost like a hybrid of that five deal that was made plus James and the original Fatal Five. So like I might lump Michelle in. Certainly, she's included in a lot of conversations. Like I feel like the brain trust right now is probably Nicole, Davon, Zakiya, Michelle. So like the four Fatal Five girls that froze out Tiffany, and three of them formed the Showmance Alliance. Zakiya kind of like spending time with Paulie and kind of getting that going. Nicole has Corey. Yeah, so I think those three girls are really in kind of the position where they tend to be dictating what's going to happen. Also, Paulie's game has been really good lately. He's doing things and saying things that's like winning him friends in the house for the most part. And I really feel like Zakiya is starting to like him more and more. And so if Zakiya is in the power position and she really likes Paulie, then that's great for Paulie because maybe she'll want to bring him along for the ride.
Tell me how much of a stretch this is in terms of comparing that alliance to the alliance of favorites from Survivor Micronesia, where Suri is the one person not in his showmance grouped up with Amanda and Ozzy and Parvati and James.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, yeah, that was a good position for
But it
Suri.
was really like, okay, this is the showmances, but it was the three women in the center. They're like, okay, we're really calling the shots here.
Totally. And yeah, I wasn't crazy about it at the time because they just popped Yao Man and Fair Play and all the people that I kind of wanted to see play again. But yeah, it was great. And ultimately, yeah, that kind of contingent created, to me, one of the greatest dynamics of Survivor history. I mean, that Eric Reichenbach blindside is just like a brutal lesson in life. Just it really is like
Yeah.
it's fantastic.
Well, I don't know who he is in this equation. That might be now we're really stretching it, but
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe wait several weeks and it'll be Corey. Corey strikes me as he's got that kind of glazed over look to his eye a little bit.
okay. All right, then let's take this one from Audrey Radijak. Where does Frank's fall from fan favorite to dislike character in multiple seasons story arc rank in reality television history? Now, again, I don't think that the story is fully written. I don't know if Frank gets off the bus at this point. Again, there's still the battle back, so this might be a little bit more of like a fall from grace and then potentially a redemption story for Frank Udy this season. But can you think of a Big Brother character that had this sort of trajectory?
Man, it was powerful. I mean, to me, it's like aside from like
Not Chicken George.
aside from Vanessa pulling him back out, it's also almost like the Austin Madelson thing, where it's like he was doing all right. He wasn't like, I don't know, it's not quite that, but he was seen as like a big strapping dude, and then like he says one thing to one person, or I guess there was more.
But he was never beloved fan favorite, winner of America's Favorite House Guest.
Well, from the outside of the house perspective, right? I was just thinking about like how they were perceived inside. Yeah, no, I mean, I really can't think of any. I mean, it would probably have to be someone who returned. I mean, maybe you could say like Big Jeff lost some love on BB13, but he's certainly still a CBS favorite. Yeah, I don't think there's really anything like this. But you make a really good point, which is like not only is there the battle back, but Big Brother fans tend to be fickle and have kind of short memory. So if Frank battles back and then it's like the whole house against Frank and he's able to save himself 2-3 weeks, I hate to say it, but it's possible people could forget all about the stuff that's going on right now and just be like, "Oh, Frank, beast it."
The dip in the Frank Udy story. This is Act 2 of the story. All right, then from Chuck Beichel wants to say, in light of recent events, does Frank even have a chance to win BB18? Is he at best playing to win 50K with an anti-Frank jury? This is a pretty interesting question. Is Frank drawing dead, Alex?
I think it'd be very interesting. I don't know if he's necessarily drawing dead. I mean, if he gets himself to the end with Bridget, like, even if they dislike him, Davon and Nicole and some people probably have too much respect for this game to give it to Bridget at that point. But it's not good. And yeah, I mean, you almost envision the only way out is the way that we said at the beginning of the season, Frank didn't want to pigeonhole himself into, which is like the Mike Holloway winner go home spot. And unfortunately, I think he's just that's his niche.
And both of us could probably do the 155,000% very authentically today.
Yeah, I thought I was doing Mike Holloway the whole time.
Yeah, that's right. All right, let's do one last question, and then we'll call it a night so Alex can recuperate. Then Oak Tree wants to say, is this the third week in a row where the roadkill comp will have no effect on who is going home this week?
Kind of. Yeah, but I still think I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Like I think I always liked the MVP. I thought there was potential for the MVP. Obviously, once you add Alyssa, like it taints the concept. But this idea of a third nominee, and I was actually talking to some people this weekend, like, do you think, obviously it's the smallest sample size ever, but do you think there's some reason why the 2 seasons with an anonymous third nominee are the only 2 seasons where guy went out first? And of course, Glenn's circumstance was different, and Jose and Victor weren't really roadkill. But like, is there something to the idea of like this anonymous nomination empowers you to go after a target rather than a pawn? I mean, again, Bronte this week, so you're not really seeing it. I just wonder if, like, will we see it, and is something that I don't know. There's not enough data yet for me, but I think it's interesting to explore.
Yeah, if one of the Fatal Five could win the roadkill next week and potentially then have Frank go up on the block in that spot, I think it would really cause a lot of fireworks. So there's still some potential here for the roadkill.
Oh, absolutely. And not only Frank being on the block, but Frank not knowing who it is. I mean, thinking he's got everyone pretty much right now. That would probably send him into a real tailspin.
Yeah, like a caged tiger.
And he was revealing when he won roadkill, so like he'll be like expecting to find out, and then to not know and to be nominated, like that kills somebody like Frank. I mean, when he knows who the person who nominated him is in BB14, sometimes he yells at them and stuff. So imagine him not knowing what to do with all that pent up frustration. I can see him just like, yeah, I could see that, and that would be some good feeds, I think.
Again, and to speak to some of the problems Frank has had this season, where he comes in after winning the roadkill and he's like KGB. Everybody knows his tells that he's like coming in like, oh man, it's like Christmas, but the Grinch took Christmas because I definitely did not win the roadkill this week.
Yeah. Big old lump of coal for Frank in the near future, I think.
Yeah, everybody's on to him. Okay. All right. Alex, great job, of course. Alex will be as part of the reality TV happy hour with Jordan Parhar this week. I really enjoyed the show you guys did last Monday. I was listening to it on my way out to Chicago. Really loved it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So catch Alex, the live feed gang, Jordan Parhar on every Monday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. Make sure you catch that on robhasawebsite.com or by subscribing to Reality TV Wrap-Ups. Right. What's the hashtag, Alex?
I feel like butt first.
Is that insensitive? I don't want to do it if it's insensitive.
Yeah, like once it shows up on Twitter, the eggs are gonna come out of the woodwork, and we're
okay. How about this?
Absolutely right.
How about this? Nana's butt first.
I'm down. Okay. Yeah,
that's what Frank's whole policy was. Like, hey, it was Nana's butt first. Now you guys.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, the chronology is accurate.
That's the defense for Frank. It was Nana's butt first.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I can, to be honest, I can envision Psycho Sid Vicious like running around pinching his wife's ass and stuff. Like I'm not defending the behavior, but I'm also like, I don't believe it's malicious from Frank. I genuinely do accept it at face value.
So in reality, it was really probably Psycho Sid's dad first. He really started this chain of this cycle of butt pinching and butt slapping.
Yeah, I don't think we're ever, like, someone whose dad was named Psycho Sid Vicious, I don't think is ever going to be, like, coming out and, like, being nominated for Humanitarian of the Year. Call me crazy, but that
beauty booty has been pinched and slapped, and, it's a whole cycle. All right. Yeah. So, there you go, Alex.
Turns your hair gray, I understand.
Yeah. Okay. At Alex Kidwell on Twitter. Thanks so much to Scott St. Pierre pulling up these questions. Had a great time in Chicago, meeting so many different listeners of the podcast. We had a really, really fun panel. Check that out. We have our Survivor panel, which was very fun as well. You can catch that coming up later on this week on robhasawebsite.com. And then that's going to do it for us here tonight. We'll be back live on Wednesday night, and then again Thursday after the eviction with all of our BB18 coverage. So looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say in the comments, and we'll talk to you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.